I'm very happy to give the floor to Tomáš. Please, the floor is yours, Tomáš.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can see me, you can hear me, and you can see my presentation. I would like to talk about designing plagiarism policy, about myths and reality, and particularly about the myths which are there in place at many universities, which design their plagiarism policies.
И говорят, что вроде только английский идет. Надо проверить.
Sorry, we're experiencing some sound problems.
Yeah, I heard some Russian. But yeah, can I go on or? First of all, let me introduce myself and my experience in the area of plagiarism detection, or plagiarism policies. I have been involved in several projects which were about plagiarism, and particularly about policies for plagiarism. The first one was impact of policies for plagiarism in higher education across Europe. It was funded by the European Union, and the goal of this project was to map the situation across the European Union about how the problem of plagiarism is tackled at different universities in different countries, what policies are in place, and how efficient these policies are. It started 10 years ago, finished in 2013. And because it was, I believe, a successful project, the results were useful for some countries which then adopted some measures against plagiarism. We were asked by the Council of Europe to extend our research to non-European Union countries. So we repeated our methodology in Southeast Europe, so basically former Yugoslavia and Albania. And so it was 2015, 2016, and recently 2017, 2018, we did similar research in the Caucasus countries, Kazakhstan and Turkey. And this research is going to be published very soon. We are just sorting out the last technical issues with the Council of Europe. I was also involved in the development of an in-house plagiarism detection tool for Mendel University in Brno in Czechia. Together with my colleagues from University of Wuppertal in Germany, I wrote a literature review on plagiarism detection, which summarizes the technical methods how to tackle plagiarism. And I am a founder and president of the board of the European Network for Academic Integrity, which is a network of more than 30 universities and national quality assurance bodies, which aims to provide a platform for experience sharing and learn from each other what works and what doesn't work in terms of academic integrity and particularly plagiarism. At Faculty of Business and Economics, Mendel University, I am an academic integrity coordinator, so my colleagues can approach me if they have any questions regarding academic integrity or plagiarism. And I'm also active member in the Council of Europe's platform for ethics, transparency, and integrity in education. I would like to share some insights I got during my research. So during the research, during the projects which were focused on plagiarism policies, we used several methods. We had online questionnaires. We asked students, teachers, and managers about their views, about their opinions, about their understanding of plagiarism. We also organized student focused groups to get some qualitative data. We talked to students and tried to understand what do they think about plagiarism and academic integrity in general. And we also interviewed dozens of higher education managers, deans, vice deans, rectors, vice rectors. And it was sometimes like really surprising and sometimes even funny that students and management had very different views. It was not an exception when I interviewed dean or vice dean. My colleagues interviewed students in the same time, and then we met. And I said her, well, it looks like great institution. There is no cheating. There are measures against cheating, measures against plagiarism. They are doing what they can. So everything looks perfect. And she said, well, the students I interviewed gave me completely different view. Like everybody is cheating, everybody is plagiarizing, and nobody cares here. So this I identified as a first myth, that the university management is well informed about the situation at their university. What I can confirm from my research from many countries and many institutions, it is not true. Yeah, they think they know extent of student cheating. They think they know the reasons, and they are convinced that teachers care about academic integrity, that teachers care about plagiarism, that they report cases. But unfortunately, it is not always the case. Well, unfortunately, it's very rarely the case. So, what's the reality? After doing this research, my colleagues and I were naturally interested, okay, so what's the situation at our institution? What's the situation at our faculty? Because we, as people interested in academic integrity and dealing with these issues, wanted to know, like, are we well informed about the situation at our faculty? So we did a survey among students and teachers at our faculty. The results are not published yet. We are working on the paper, still incorporating some revisions. But the main message was that hundreds of students admitted having cheated. Yeah, like the small piece of paper to get some information, unallowed aid during the written exam. This is something which was admitted by half of the students. Half of the students prepared this piece of paper, and half of that really used that during the exams. And usually teachers either didn't care, or they just told them hide it and did not report the cases. And there were also some more severe violations of academic integrity that students admitted. So we had hundreds of students which admitted cheating in anonymous questionnaire, and only several dozens of disciplinary cases which were really reported by the teachers. And it was admitted by the teachers. They do not report the cases. They don't want to report the cases. They don't want to cause the problems to the students. They don't want to do some extra work. And they don't report the cases, even though it's clearly written in the regulations. It is their obligation to do that. Of course, this is not our institution only. We had hard data from our institution, but the interviews I did and the literature, results of similar studies published in the literature confirm similar situations. Yeah, so this is something which the policymakers should be aware of. Like the reality might be completely different from what the management sees or what the teachers sees, and what the teachers do is sometimes very different from what is written in the policies and regulations. So very often, even though there are policies in place, they are not really implemented and teachers don't follow them. Sometimes when I asked the management about plagiarism and plagiarism detection, they replied, oh yeah, we have recently bought a license of text matching software, and they named the text matching software they had, so the problem is solved. Yeah, we have a software and that solves the problem. I said, okay, yeah, that's nice thing that you have a software, and yeah, can you please tell me more about it, how the software is used, what is it used for, if it is obligatory to use the software, and so on and so forth. And then you come to the reality, and in some cases you find out that the license is there, yeah, somewhere laying on the shelf, and everybody is afraid of touching the software. Nobody actually uploads anything to the software. So apparently the problem cannot be solved just by having the software. Some institutions use the software only for PhD thesis. Like, yeah, that's the most common issue in media, in public scandals, Germany, Austria, even Russia. In every country is like any country has famous cases of politicians or rectors or other high-profile people plagiarizing, and it's very often in PhD thesis. Plagiarism in PhD thesis is considered like more severe than master or bachelor thesis. So it's the first thing which universities do, try to check for plagiarism in PhD thesis. Next level, bachelor thesis, master thesis, which is of course also important because all PhD students had to write their master or bachelor thesis before. So if they committed plagiarism there, it is very likely that they will continue in this practice during their PhD studies. And of course, bachelor and master theses are not written out of the blue. The students are asked during their studies to write some smaller assignments, and this is an opportunity for the university to provide a formative feedback for the students. If there is any unintentional plagiarism, students should learn from this mistake, to be aware of the issue and not to commit it again when writing their thesis. But it's still about students, and it's usually like well accepted that the plagiarism is checked in student documents. But when I asked about scientific papers or some documents produced by the academics, it's usually like, well, sometimes it's a problem at the universities, like political problem, to check for the documents of academics. So in some cases, the plagiarism or the text matching software is here for student documents only, and nobody checks the academics. Of course, to make the system efficient, it has to be obligatory to use the software, and there should be clearly defined processes: who has access to the software, who has access to the results, who is responsible for uploading the documents to that system. Okay, so let's imagine that we have the system. It is clearly defined what the system is used for. and there are clear processes and responsibilities. Then there is another myth which comes to place very, very often. People call the text matching software plagiarism detection software, being convinced that a software can detect plagiarism. Unfortunately, this is not true either. I was head of the international team who did the largest software test ever. It was done under the umbrella of the European Network for Academic Integrity. Last year at this conference, Professor Deborah Weber-Wolf presented the results of this test. So she was also part of the team. We did the test together. And yeah, we found out what we confirmed what we expected, that there is no plagiarism detection software, that there are severe limitations and severe discrepancies between what people expect from the software to what the software actually does. The results of our test are published in the International Journal of Educational Technology in Higher Education. Like briefly, we tested 15 different systems. We had documents in 8 European languages. We had documents with various plagiarism types. There was copy-paste plagiarism. We replaced synonyms in some documents, and we paraphrased some documents. And we used also various sources of original documents, of course, Wikipedia. We downloaded some internet sources, some blogs, and also publicly available student theses. So these are the results which we got when testing plagiarism from Wikipedia. The maximum score is 5. So you can see that the copy-paste plagiarism from Wikipedia is like very well identified by the major systems. Unfortunately, antiplagiat.ru was not part of the testing. We got in touch later, so the results are not here. But yeah, at least there is no conflict of interest for me to presenting these results. But what I wanted to show by this table, you can see that copy-paste plagiarism is well identified. Yeah, sometimes there are problems that Wikipedia may change over time. So some systems index older version that is actually used for plagiarism. But the scores are pretty nice, and even though there are some words changed, it doesn't really matter. But when you replace some words by synonyms, the text match identified by the software drops. And if you paraphrase the documents, it drops even more. So for paraphrased or even translated documents, the success of the software, yeah, the percentage identified is really, really low. We evaluated the systems not only in terms of the coverage, how much of the noun plagiarism is identified, but also in terms of usability. So how well that the software is designed for the users, how comfortable it is, what support they provide, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and we put our results to a 2-dimensional table. On the x-axis, we have coverage, and on the y-axis, we have usability. And as you can see, no system is perfect. No system finds everything. The best systems can identify a bit more than half of noun plagiarism. Yeah? Which means that even you buy the best system in the world, there might be half of the plagiarism cases which remain undetected. Since we conducted our test, there were some development on the plagiarism, on the text matching software market. Turnitin acquired Unicheck, then Plagscan and Urkund merged to one company, Original, and currently it seems that Turnitin will acquire also this new company. So these systems which performed best at our test will probably become soon one company. Another myth connected to so-called plagiarism detection systems. Users know how to use the system and users can interpret the similarity reports. When talking to teachers, either during the interviews, during our research, or while conducting our workshops on plagiarism, we found many cases where teachers struggles to distinguish between the text match and plagiarism. This is very often a problem that users of the system take the similarity report, see something highlighted red or different colors depending on how the system works, and says, yeah, this is plagiarism, we have to deal with it. But the text match is different thing than plagiarism. There might be text match which is properly quoted and cited. There might be some accidental text match, some long phrases which are normally used with respect to the current economical development after the COVID-19 crisis or something like that. It's a sequence of 15 words. So whenever you use it, the text matching software will identify that. But obviously this is not a plagiarism because it's the normal wording, how you introduce some idea. And users have problem to distinguish between this accidental text match and the real plagiarism. They struggle to identify false positives, they struggle to identify false negatives, and judge the severity of plagiarism cases. Yeah, because sometimes it's really like small case, you forgot to provide the quotation marks. Sometimes it's really like copy pasted several pages, and we have to distinguish what is less severe and what is more severe. Some institutions, the policies blindly rely on the number presented by the text matching software. Sometimes the policymakers are convinced that there is a threshold of acceptable plagiarism level. I have seen in many institutional documents sentences like whatever is below 20% is okay, or 30% or 40% or whatever the number is, and whatever is above this threshold, above 20%, is considered plagiarism, and we have to follow disciplinary measures. So the myth is that the plagiarism detection software gives us a percentage of plagiarism, and so we can set a magic number, and anything below that number is fine, anything above that number is not fine. But as I said, software does not detect plagiarism. Software identifies text match, and not all text match is plagiarism, and not all plagiarism is identified as text match. When you translate something from English to Russian, like direct translation, and not provide the source, it will be definitely plagiarism. But obviously there is no text match between the original English document and your Russian document, because the words are very different. So even small percentage presented by the system may be severe plagiarism. And in some cases, when students like rework the document, improve the document, they can get high text match to their previous version, which is in the system's database. And obviously, this is not plagiarism, it's just the improvement of the document. Yeah, so it has to be well understood that percentage of text match is not equal to percentage of plagiarism. So when we want to assess severity of plagiarism, we have to consider issues like paraphrase and translation, which minimize the text match, and also type of the content, if the plagiarism is in a theoretical introduction or in the results, and intention to deceive. Another myth. Students know how to cite and reference. Students know everything about academic writing, so if they fail to cite and reference properly, it's deliberate cheating and we should follow the disciplinary procedures. But how can we be convinced that students know everything about academic writing? When did the students learn about it? Was it at secondary school? It's not usually the case. Do they learn it from the supervisors? And do really all supervisors provide the students with sufficient explanation and sufficient trainings about academic writing? At an academic writing course, that's the better option. And is it, but is it obligatory for all students to take such course? If we want to have a disciplinary outcome from plagiarism, the university should be able to prove that all students learned about plagiarism and learned about academic writing before. I have heard about a case from Australia. It was not a student, it was already a graduate. After several years, the plagiarism was discovered in his final thesis. And it was a big shame for him, because he was like manager in some company, and now the plagiarism was discovered, and he had to resign from his position, and yeah, was publicly ashamed. What he did, he sued the university and told them, hey, it's your fault. You didn't teach me how to write my thesis properly. So I committed plagiarism because I didn't know how to do that. And now I am ashamed and you are responsible for that. And the university struggled really hard to prove that they provided him with sufficient training, and it was not the fault of the university, but the fault of him. So if we want to apply disciplinary measures for plagiarism, we should provide students with sufficient training, and we should be able to prove that they received this training. So for the institutions who rely on the supervisors, there is another myth which is connected to this convincement that teachers know how to cite and reference. Teachers are able to advise their students, and teachers understand all the peculiarities about the issue of plagiarism. Reality, unfortunately, this is not always true. We had a plagiarism scandal at my university 3 years ago, and after that we decided, or the university management decided, that we should conduct workshops for teachers about plagiarism. So my colleague and I visited all the faculties of our university and conducted the workshops. And sometimes we were really surprised how basic questions teachers can have. And again, this is not the case of our institution only. We conducted plagiarism workshops in many countries, many institutions, and we experienced basic questions almost every time. Yeah, so some teachers are uncertain about the definition of plagiarism. Teachers are uncertain about citation rules. They don't know exactly how to correctly reference themselves. So how can they be able to properly advise their students? Yeah, during our workshops, we use this definition of plagiarism, and we want to show that it is a pretty complex issue and there are several aspects which should be taken into account. So plagiarism is considered as a use of ideas, content, or structures without appropriately acknowledging the source to benefit in a setting where originality is expected. As I said before, I did my literature review on plagiarism detection. So this definition was firstly published in this literature review. It is based on several sources and based on several definitions I came across by that time. And in my opinion, this definition covers the aspects which are important. So it is not about the text. It's also about the ideas, about any type of content, and including structural plagiarism. What makes copying plagiarism is that you don't appropriately acknowledge the source. And not every copy is bad. And we have to use previously published results. We have to, or it is sometimes useful to use the figures, the charts, the data, whatever, but it is okay as long as you appropriately acknowledge the original source. And also another question is, if the originality is expected, was the student assignment or was the intent of the work to produce the original work, or just to learn by copying something, which is case in many fields of study, that students learn by copying and it's completely okay. And if this is purpose of the work, you cannot accuse anyone from plagiarism. The next myth, which I often come across with, is that you can't express it differently. At many faculties, many fields of studies, teachers claim that there are some standard definitions, standard descriptions, standard, let's say, methodology, and paraphrasing would do more harm than copying. And then obviously, if you have 10 students who are writing their thesis on this topic, they will have like 10 pages copy-pasted word for word because you can't express it differently. Another myth, like connected to this one, is that there are only finite number of paragraphs describing particular idea or topics. Yeah, if you ask the business and economics students to write about the inflation after COVID-19 pandemics, for example, there are only finite number of the sequences of words you can get. So it's likely that two students by accident produce the same document. To the first part, like copying standardized text might be okay, yeah, if it is really the case that you can't express it differently and that paraphrasing would do more harm than benefit. So feel free to copy it, but distinguish what is copied from your own text, refer to the original source and reference the original source so that it can be tracked. Yeah? This is a safe way how not to commit plagiarism while copying even standardized text. To the finite number of paragraphs, this can be easily shown that this is not true, that yeah, the number of paragraphs is finite, but huge. and the likelihood that two students produce the same text by coincidence is almost zero. You can do an experiment, take a group of 20 students, let them read an article and write a summary. And I'm sure that you won't get the same text. You may try to compute a probability. Yeah? If we let all people in the world write about the same topic, would they produce a pair of the same paragraphs by the end of the universe? And the answer is no, or really unlikely. Almost zero. Last but not least, myth. At some institutions, some institutions claim that they have zero tolerance of plagiarism. Like, we immediately expel anyone who commits plagiarism. Then the reality is more complicated. What zero tolerance actually means? Do you expel a student for one plagiarized paragraph? Even a first-year student who doesn't know doesn't know anything about academic writing? And yeah, if not, so where is the borderline between who you expel and who you just warn or punish some other way? And do you also dismiss academics for plagiarism? And again, where is the borderline? Do you dismiss the academics for one plagiarized paragraph? Probably not. Probably not. And self-plagiarism is also a complicated issue. So as we can see, plagiarism is a complex issue. We have to distinguish between intentional plagiarism and errors, unintentional plagiarism. Was there expectation of originality? Does the plagiarized documentary violate the assignment guidelines? Was it clearly stated that originality is expected? We have to distinguish small extent and large extent plagiarism. And copying one paragraph will probably lead to a less severe outcome than copying several pages. How to measure it, how to distinguish it, this should be written in the policies. Do we distinguish between plagiarism in theoretical introduction and in the results? Does it really matter? Again, this is something which has to be written in the policy. So plagiarism is a complex issue, so addressing plagiarism is a complex issue too. You could see that there are several myths which are often in the heads of policymakers. So we should make sure that our institutional policy at first defines plagiarism and distinguishes intentional, unintentional, small extent, large extent. Describe the processes, use of software, who does it, what is obligatory to upload to the system, describe the processes of reporting the cases, and so on. And addresses education, both for students and academics. We can't presume that everybody knows what plagiarism is and how to identify it. We have to provide trainings for our staff and students. And the most important thing is that the institutional policy is accepted by the community. You can have the best policy in the world, but if people don't know about it or don't follow it, it's worthless. Not to reinvent the wheel, I recommend you reading the article of Tracy Bretak and her colleagues. Tracy analyzed policies for academic integrity at 39 Australian universities, and they identified 5 core elements which should be present in any academic integrity policy, and of course, including plagiarism policy. These elements are access, approach, responsibility, detail, and support. Yeah, so here is the reference to the article which was published in the International Journal for Educational Integrity. So what do these core elements mean? Access means that the policy should be easy to locate, easy to read, so everybody should be able to find it, read it, and understand it. It should be well written, with clear language and concise. So it should be understandable, because if the policy is not understandable, it cannot be accepted. Second element is approach. Academic integrity should be viewed as an educative process. There should be clearly stated purpose and values, institutional commitment to academic integrity values. And positive and educational approach should not be only in the preamble of the policy, it should run through the whole policy. Responsibility. There should be clearly defined responsibilities of all stakeholders. Plagiarism is not a student issue only. Of course, the students have their responsibilities, but the academic staff, administrative staff, and the management have their responsibilities too. Everything should be mentioned in the policy. Not only mentioned, but clearly defined. Detail. There should be extensive but not excessive details. Detailed description of breaches, definition, classification of their severity, and description of processes, how breaches are identified and processed, clear list of objective outcomes, and also contextual factors that are relevant for taking the decision about the outcome. And appeal process, if the students feel that they were harmed by the decision. And the fifth element is support. So each policy should contain some support measures which supports implementation of the policy. So these measures facilitate awareness and understanding. So there should be education of students and staff. There should be preventative strategies. Because without long-term support, without sustainable support, the policy will never be accepted by the community and will never be enacted. So, coming to the end, let me summarize the myths I came across during my research. So there, I've identified 9 of them. It would be nice if you have some other ideas, if you come up with them during the discussion. I would love to have 10 myths. It looks better than 9. So management knows what's happening at their institution. Software solves the problem. Software can detect plagiarism. Users use the software properly. There is some acceptable threshold, some percentage of plagiarism. Students know citation rules. Teachers know citations rules. You can't express it differently, and zero tolerance of plagiarism. Unfortunately, none of these statements is actually true, and the reality is much more complicated. And when designing the plagiarism policy, I really recommend you to follow Tracy Bretach's recommendation on core policy elements. So the policy should be accessible with positive approach, clearly defined responsibilities, extensive but not excessive detail, and there should be some support. There are some more materials which might help you when designing academic integrity or plagiarism policy. If you go to academicintegrity.eu, this is the webpage of the European Network for Academic Integrity, you can find the collection of educational materials, not only about plagiarism, but about other integrity issues. There are materials for students, there are materials for teachers which they can use with their students. There is glossary for academic integrity and general guidelines, which is useful for management. We have also self-evaluation tools for students, for teachers, and for management. And recently we established a working group on academic integrity policies. So if you are really interested in this issue, you may join the European Network for Academic Integrity and become member of this working group. So that's all from my side. I thank you for your attention. I hope the organizers make the presentation available for you so you can make use of the links and sources there. The license for the slides is Creative Commons, so feel free to use it. But just acknowledge the source. So thank you again for your attention. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Спасибо, Tomáš.
Tomáš, thank you very much. Thank you. It was an interesting overview of your myth, and I'm very impressed, I guess, as well as our audience. We had certain technical issues with the broadcast, but we will make your slides available on the website, of course. Thank you for the Creative Commons license. That's a great example. And I hope that you will let us publish the video of your intervention. Let me please ask some questions. I will ask mine first. You described the myth that could be identified as problems or issues or challenges. These are the knots, maybe, or the points where the industry has to rethink its own principles and maybe go beyond what we are used to do. Do you think that there can be a certain voice saying that this does not work and this should be like this, this is correct, or this should be done like this? Do you think that there is someone or something that can distinguish between the myth and the norms, the reality that can be workable?
I'm not sure if I understood it correctly. Like, do you mean that the developers of the text matching software tools should provide this, or?
Нет, я не имею в виду...
No, I'm not talking about developers. I was mostly thinking about teachers or about the working group. You mentioned some challenges, and they do exist, and we recognize them also. But do you know some answers, some solutions to this?
Well, yeah, the solution is at first to acknowledge that it is not easy to address plagiarism. Like, I can see it at my institution. I have been dealing with plagiarism for 10 years now. And like, finally, we are now, my institution have accepted the policy, which was like designed by me and my colleagues and discussed with the Vice Deans for Education and all the committees. And it's already the third attempt of the policy. I kept explaining the management, hey, this is something which cannot work. You cannot have the 20% threshold there, and so on. So it really takes time, and it requires people who are responsible for the decision to accept that they are not perfect, that they don't understand everything, and to accept advice from someone else. So yeah, that was also the reason why I prepared this presentation, because I hope that this message might be useful for other institutions as well. Yeah, so the solution would be to learn from each other, read Tracy Bretach's paper, read the NI guidelines for academic integrity, and take it into account when designing the institutional policy.
Спасибо.
Okay, thank you. Let me continue from my side. In our country and in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and other post-Soviet countries, we attempt to build up the process in a way that we feel correct. And one of the challenges that we detect now is that teachers and the management should spend more time on finding solutions than they do now. They used to write a paper, you know, like 20% threshold and nothing, just to give an example. And that was it. Now they should build up a process, you know, you have to analyze every case on its own, and it requires more time resource. And have you ever given a thought to this side of the problem?
Yeah, let me flip it a bit around. So don't look at it as an extra work for academics. Look at it as an opportunity to increase the quality of education. If the teacher requires students to write an essay, write a 20 pages document on whatever topic, it is not because the teachers need the document for something. Yeah? The purpose of the assignment is that the student learn something. And it is extremely important to provide students with appropriate feedback and really detailed feedback to that document, like this was good, this was not good, where the students should improve, and so on. And when you spend some time like reading the document and providing that feedback, in this case, like having the text matching software report, like aside is something that you simply include in the feedback, and the amount of extra work is not as big. Yeah, so we should focus on, like we as a teachers should focus on providing formative feedback, which really helps students to develop their academic writing skills, to develop their professional skills. And considering the text match or considering potential plagiarism is only one of the issues which we should take into account. But unfortunately, it's often the case that teachers struggle with hundreds of students' papers and are not able to even run them through the software. But the more severe aspect in this situation is that they are not even able to provide any feedback to the students. Yeah? And then students are convinced that the teachers don't even read it, so they either plagiarize it or buy it from someone else, which is even worse. So take it from the positive side, look at it as the quality of education issue, and yeah, taking plagiarism is one part of providing the formative feedback to the student documents.
Да, совершенно.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Plagiarism is just one of the facets of the problem. From my side, I can add that the institutions and the management should be ready to pay for these extra hours. Maybe they should assign less students to each teacher so they can provide better feedback. Let me just ask you some questions from to broadcast from our audience. What kind of software do you use in your institution? What kind of software, the plagiarism detection software you use?
Yeah, it was a long journey. Some 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, we implemented in-house solution. So it was the system used just for Mendel University in Brno. But obviously, it could not work properly because if your database is limited only to one institution, you can't detect the text match from the documents from other institutions. So after a couple of years, we switched to a kind of Czech national system. It's called thesis.cz, and it's a system provided by Masaryk University, and it's used by most of the Czech universities, and it works really well for documents in Czech language. And to address plagiarism or potential plagiarism in English language documents, because we provide also study programs in English, we bought a license of PlugScan last year. So we use PlugScan for English language documents and the Czech national system for the Czech documents.
Спасибо. Еще вопрос.
Thank you. Another question. Do you ever research the following question? Can the improved academic writing course improve the situation on the plagiarism? So does this course, if we organize it properly, really change the situation?
Yes, it does. It was proven by some studies in Australia and in the US, but it's just it's part of the puzzle. Yeah, it's not that you introduce the academic writing course and the problem is solved. You have to have the policies. You have to provide the education of academics. You have to have the processes and so on. So then there are more things to address, but certainly providing an academic integrity academic writing course is one of the things which improve the situation significantly, and most importantly, it makes your life easier when you want to punish students for clearly intentional plagiarism, because the student can't say, I didn't know how to do that. Because you immediately reply, well, but you passed the academic writing course and this was part of the syllabus there. So don't tell me you didn't know. It's intentional, so we can now expel you for large extent intentional plagiarism. And of course, it's also again part of the quality of education. If we require students to write their thesis, for most of them, it's the first time they are asked to produce such a big document, and they don't know how to do that. They struggle with it. They might resort to plagiarism or to contract cheating, to outsource the assignment from someone else. So if we teach them how to do it properly, if we teach them about academic writing, we minimize these risks.
Спасибо, Tomáš.
Thank you very much, Tomáš. That was the most informative talk, but unfortunately we have to move on, although I would be happy to keep talking to you. Hopefully we'll be able to continue this conversation in other formats. So this is not a goodbye. This is see you soon.